All right. Well, I think we're coming up at 2 o'clock, so let's get started. Let's make this small. So, welcome everybody to the 11th class in this series, getting started with Maps for Office. And I would say that of all the different things that we've looked at, this is um, this is one of the easier products to use. So hopefully I can convey that, and let's see what we can do. All right. So we'll be going through quite a few things. I already sent out the installing maps for Office a little bit earlier, so hopefully most of you were able to get that installed and log in, and you can follow along. If not, then just watch along. So we'll do it in reverse. Usually, I think most classes start with Excel and then go to PowerPoint, but I thought it would be kind of fun just to start with PowerPoint and then look at everything that we can do in Excel. So we'll be making a couple of different maps in Excel, as you will see really soon. So the installation, I'm assuming that you've seen this. So you can just go to the website, download it. You can figure out if your machine is a 32-bit or a 64-bit. Just fill it out, download it. And this is really interesting. I was just communicating with Saul, and I downloaded the 2020.1.2 yesterday, and apparently today there's a newer version. But hopefully, if you install the newer version, it will work the same as what I'm showing you here. So Maps for Office, they're really just two plugins for Microsoft Office. So it allows you to put interactive maps in PowerPoint. And it also allows you to quickly take the data in your Excel spreadsheet, assuming that there's a column in your Excel spreadsheet where you can derive the location. So, for example, an address or the name of a state or even geographic coordinates like latitudes and longitudes. And then you can easily and quickly make some graphs in Excel. And there's some other really cool features with it. So I can sort of imagine people using this and then quickly being able to pull up, demographics reports and some of those other built-in little tools that you will have available to you. So I hope most of you enjoyed the Esri conference last week. Um, I took a session on different maps for different Microsoft products. And so they showed us the maps for SharePoint, the maps for Power BI, which is an app kind of like dashboards that allows you just to make dashboards and graphs and things like that, as well as maps for Teams. And the thing that struck me is that if you know one of them, you know all of them. So the interface for all the different ones are pretty similar to each other. But of course, today we're focusing on the maps for Office. So let's start with the maps for PowerPoint. And what I'm going to do is stop my PowerPoint for a little bit, make it small. And hopefully all of you got the email this morning with the instructions, the workbook, as well as an Excel spreadsheet with the exercise data in there. So with that, we've installed it. Let's get started. So it says fire up PowerPoint. So let me do that. I'll just open up a blank presentation. I know it always likes to just kind of guide you what to put where, so I'm just gonna use my mouse, select it all, and get rid of it. So I start out with a nice blank screen. And if you have successfully installed Maps for Office, then you should see this ArcGIS Maps in the menu. So let's click on that. And then the first thing it will ask us is to sign in. Okay, and so for me, actually, it recognized me, but let me sign out real quick. And let's see if I can get the sign in box. There we go. Okay, so one of the issues that I ran into this morning with a different person is that you need to make sure that you are signed in to your organization's URL. So click on the drop down here.
Can you share your screen, Wilma?
Oh, am I not sharing? It says I am sharing my screen.
You're not sharing your PowerPoint as you're negotiating through it. You're sharing the workbook.
Oh, well, that's no good. Stop sharing. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. So let's try that again. Okay, how about now? Are you guys seeing the login screen on my screen?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you for letting me know. Okay, so let me just click out of this. So I clicked on sign in here. And it is important, you put in your username and password, but most of you belong to an ArcGIS organization. And so make sure that you put that in here. So if you work for, if you're part of the Idaho organizational account, so if I'm the one that manages your accounts, then just type in the word Idaho here. If it is a different ArcGIS online account, just go to your sign in, and let me just sign into ArcGIS online here. And you can tell by the URL that ours is idwr.maps.idaho.gov. My guess is that if you work for Fish and Game, it's probably IDFG for Idaho Fish and Game or idwr.maps.idaho.com. So hopefully you're able to sign in. So put that in there. Make sure your login information is correct. Now I'll just put that in here. And if all goes well, I am signed in. Okay, welcome, Wilma Robertson. All right, so the interactive process has 4 steps. So let's click on add a map. And I have found that I had some issues with this interface at my home computer because I'm using a laptop which has like a small screen and then a monitor with a larger screen, but it seems to work well since here at work all my screens are the same size. So we're going through 4 different steps. We're going to find the map that we would like to include. Then we're going to pick and see which of the layers, or for which of the layers we would like to show the symbols, the legend. We'll pick the layout, so where the map goes, where the legend goes. We'll review it, and then we'll insert it. So it's a pretty straightforward, like 4-step process. So let's go ahead and instead of picking something from my content, let's go to the Living Atlas. And you can search for any map that you like. I know a couple of good ones pop up when I click on drought. And then let's see here. There's the standardized precipitation map. When I click the check mark, it will actually pick it up. And depending on how responsive this map is, the service behind this map is, it might take a little bit of time or it might be really fast before it shows up in the background. And you have the option to click next or submit. When you submit, that's it. It just puts the map on your PowerPoint. But we would like to, do a little bit more configuring before we move on. So I'll click on next. So I can tell of all the different layers that are on the map, and the little eye here will show you if they are visible or not visible. And since this is the one that's visible right now and it looks pretty good, I'll go ahead and add that legend. So I'll click on the plus, and then you can see the legend shows up on the right. If there are multiple layers that I would like to include in the legend, I can just hit the other ones as well. But it is kind of nice. So, for example, if you have a lot of layers on your map that are just more background type layers, they don't necessarily all have to show up in your legend. So with that, I'm going to click next because the next step is to choose a layout. So I'll pick the fill right, and I'll click next to see what that looks like. And I am not sure where this is coming from. This is from a different map that I recently made, so that's kind of odd, but let me go ahead and I will click insert the map. If I would like to do that. I think now I've done it, right? Oh, this is a different PowerPoint that I have open. I see what happened here. In your case, it will probably open up a new PowerPoint slide and then add that information to it. In my case, it recognized that I already had a PowerPoint slide open and it added it to that. So let me just take that piece out. So this is more, I'm guessing what yours looks like. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my ArcGIS maps because I don't really like, looking at the ocean right here. So I'll click back on ArcGIS maps. And I'm going to edit this map. So that basically puts me back in the configuration piece where I can go ahead and move this around. I can put the legend anywhere I like. Maybe I want to zoom it in a little bit more so it is focused on Eastern United States. Okay, and let me try and insert that map. There we go. So figuring out what this would look like in like an actual presentation, let's just go ahead and try it out. So I'm on slide 12 on page 6. So I can show my slides from the beginning, and I'll just swap my display so it actually looks like the PowerPoint. And you can see that I have a little lock right here. When I click that, it goes into live mode. And so at this point, I can zoom in and zoom out into my map. If I want to, I can click on full screen and make it even bigger. And then, this being part of a presentation, once you are done talking about this map, you can go ahead and lock it up again and exit the live mode. And then you can go to your next slide. Okay. So hopefully this seems fairly easy and straightforward for you. Okay. Are there any questions about adding a map to PowerPoint? All right. So the only caveat would be is that you would need to have an ArcGIS online creator license. And so if you are taking this on the road, you would need to be sure that you are connected to the internet where you are, so that you can actually log in to your PowerPoint maps for Office and then use it. Okay, so with that, let's go into Excel, which is where we will be spending most of our time. So I am on page 7 on slide 13. And let me just pull this up here really quick. So we are going to be geocoding. And in essence, a good way to think about geocoding or georeference and what that is to take a piece of data, for example, the location of a school or the location of a road, anything like that, just a piece of data. And you basically just stick in a pin in it and you say, this is where it is on the world. And so there, of course, there's different ways to geocode things, ranging from like place names. For example, Idaho. We know we can put this data in Idaho. We don't know where in Idaho, but still, it gets us closer, than the entire planet. A different way of doing it is using an address. which is what we will be doing. Or we can use a coordinate system, um, latitudes and longitudes, for example, that is a geographic coordinate system. Or we can use a projected coordinate system. Maybe I've heard of like the UTM or the, oh boy, what is it called? The state plane coordinate system. So there's different ways of doing that. Another way of doing it, which actually does not work in Maps for Office, but we'd like to use here in Idaho, is to indicate things with the public land survey system. So it is so many townships north, so many ranges east, section 5, and then in the northeast of the northeast quarter. So those are different ways to georeference. But you need to have something like that in your Excel spreadsheet, because otherwise, of course, Maps for Office doesn't know where to put it. So let's take a look at our example data and see what kind of items we have in there to georeference. So let me make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. So here I have downloaded the stats for March the 7th this year of the total number of deaths, hospitalizations, and positive cases of COVID, cumulative over time. And so, of course, in this case, we can locate this because we can look at the state name. And of course, those cases would be all over the state. So it is appropriate to sort of show them in like larger areas. So the next data set we'll be looking at are the hospitals in Idaho. And here we have an address and a city. And but we'll get back to this really, really soon, because there's one thing I want to add before we actually start geocoding this. And finally, I downloaded a data set with the mean January and July temperatures for different weather stations in Idaho. I think there's like 330 of them. And so those are indicated by the latitude and the longitude, which are expressed in decimal degrees. So that means that if you have, for example, 40 degrees and 30 minutes, the decimal degrees would be 40.5, because 30, of course, is right in between 0 and 60 minutes. Anyway, the ArcGIS Maps for Office will know how to interpret this. So those are the different ways that we can put data on the map. Of course, if we have a data set that doesn't have any information in it, that will tell you where it is, then you can't make a map out of it. Okay, so make sure the exercise data is on your computer. So yeah, I saved it to my computer. So let's start with the hospitals here. So if you've done any geocoding, you have learned two things. The first one is that geocoding costs credits. So to geocode like 1,000 addresses costs about 40 credits. The credits is about 10 cents. So technically, you can geocode 1,000 addresses for about $4. Now, I believe all of you have plenty of credits to cover those 20 addresses, which will not cost very much. So that's okay. And the second thing you may have noticed, and I've definitely run into it, is that if I were to geocode this for some reason, it will find a Boise elsewhere in the country, or it will find a Lewiston elsewhere in the country and just place it right there. So just to double check and ensure that this is all gonna fit in Idaho, I am going to right click on the column D here and choose Insert. And then I'll just call this the state. And I know that all of them are in Idaho, because this data set, after all, is hospitals in Idaho. Okay, so now when I geocode, I'll tell it to also include that state column. And so it's more likely that everything is actually geocoded correctly. Okay, so with that in place, let me just go ahead and save that. So we've now made it to slide 15 on page 8. So let's go ahead and add a map. So just like in PowerPoint, in Excel, we also have the ArcGIS Maps menu, and it's asking me to sign in again. Hopefully it still recognizes me from last time. It did not. Okay, so I'll just go ahead, sign in. And then I want to make sure that my organization's URL is correct. I'll just type in Idaho and continue. Sometimes I wonder if we would make more money as GIS professionals if we got paid for every time we have to log in. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and add a map. So the second option here, add a map. So it is going to ask me what data I would like to use. And so for the data set, it doesn't have anything here. On the right-hand side, it says choose the format of your data set, table recommended. So it obviously doesn't quite like the way that we have our data organized here. As a matter of fact, it is not in a table, which is funny because you would think that this is a table, right? So let's go ahead and actually insert a table. So in Excel, that's pretty easy to do. I'm going to go ahead and select all the cells that are part of my table. And then I go to Insert along the top and click Table. And I'll tell it that my table has headers because there it is, name, address, city, and so on. Okay, so let's try this again. So for the data set, it still doesn't recognize it. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and delete this map. And then I'll just, create it fresh. Add a map. Okay. All right. So now you can see that it recognizes the table. It is asking for the type of location. And so I have an address, city, and state. So I'll click on the drop down here and say, okay, use an address. And then later on, like once it's all created, I can tell it how I would like it to symbolize the map by default. So the staff that is good. Now I want to make sure that it's actually recognizing all those different fields that make up the address. So I'll click on match columns with location type. And I'm just going to go down here, United States, that's correct. The address is spread out over several columns. And so I have the first address in my address field, my city in my city field, my state in my state field. So that actually looks good to me. So with that, let's click on Add Data and on Add Data again. All right, so there is my first map in Maps for Office. And this is meant to be, really easy for people that perhaps are not doing GIS for a living all the time. Okay. So I think we geocoded it. So with this, let's pick a different base map. Since I want to highlight where those hospitals are, sometimes I find, especially when you're trying to show sizes of symbols, the less distracting the background is, the better. So I am going to change the base map. So I'm on slide 18 on page 9. Okay, I just noticed a question coming through in the chat. Does anybody else have a situation where the sign-in option is not there in the Excel ArcGIS tab? So you're saying you go here, but you're missing this sign in, sign out button? That is very odd. Would you be able to close Excel down and then restart it and see maybe if it didn't load right the first time? Okay, so picking picking a base map here. So I'd like to pick something that is maybe a little bit darker. So I'm a big fan of the human geography maps, either the gray one or the dark one. And so after you pick one that you like, I can just hit the close on the base map selector, and I'm just back to my map. Okay, so we can see that the data is now stored in one layer. And just like before I showed you, you can just turn that layer on and off. Now, a couple of things I don't like about this. First of all, the name, Table 1 is not very descriptive. And those dots, while informative, typically when I see a map and all the categories are just numbers, like not nice round numbers, but just numbers, it tells me that, this map was put together really quick and it's not really polished up yet. So let's go ahead and do some configuration on this layer. And I can do that by going to my layer settings by clicking on this gear. So first off, let me go change the name of this layer. And I will rename this to Hospital. That's in Idaho. And I can just click away. So if you're familiar with ArcGIS Online, you can see that it has some of the same functionality, but it doesn't do as much as the full-blown ArcGIS Online. But then the flip side is that it's hopefully easier to use. Okay, let's try the cluster points. Let me make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see, and I'll just make Idaho a little bit bigger. And just to try it out, let's click on the Enable Point Clustering. And so what it does is in any area where there's like a bunch of hospitals together, it basically just groups them and then tells you how many hospitals are in that group. So let's zoom into Boise a little bit more. When I go to the Boise Village, eventually I should be able to see that there are 2 hospitals there. I think those 2. Okay, so let me turn that off, or there's an option to sort of, basically state how it behaves and the color it shows in. If it sort of starts clustering really soon, oh, here you can tell the 2 of them are together here, or not. But now that I've shown you, let's turn that off. Okay. The next thing that we want to do is change the colors. So let me just zoom back to all of Idaho. And I'm essentially doing this by rolling that center button on my mouse forwards and backwards. And then to move it around, I just click down on it and then I can drag my map. So let's go in the settings again.
Hey, Wilma, this is Nick in District 1.
Hey, Nick.
Hey there. Hey, can you do the next one, focus in on North Idaho since we're the prettier part of the state?
Oh, sure you are. Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Wilma.
Okay. That was it. That's what you wanted. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and change the colors on the circles here, so they're no longer green. So this is part of the layer style. And so in this case, there's different ways to show this data. For example, if I clicked on locations, then every dot would be the same size and the same color. I can create a heat map where if there's more points together, it actually would show a more intense color. I like the constant amount, where it basically is just the number of beds determines how big the circle is. We can rotate the symbol, although here that doesn't make a lot of sense because the circle is round, so it will still look round. We can change the transparency, but since the circles are pretty small, I'm okay with it not being transparent. The visibility range, and so, sorry, Nick, I'm gonna zoom out of northern Idaho again. Okay, if I were to set this maybe to a smaller scale, you can see that those dots are gone, but then when I zoom back in, they appear again. Okay, so here we get to the classification part. So this tells me that there are 5 classes, which I can make that more or less. So this really means that there's just 5 different size of circles. I can change that, the maximum size of the circle. So let me just go ahead and change this to 20 and see what you think. So on the one hand, I would say it doesn't cover up as much of your map, but on the other hand, it makes it just a little bit harder to see the differences between the different sizes of circles. So I'll just go ahead and turn this back into 50. Different ways of classification. But let me click here on the advanced options to make some other changes. Okay.
Hey,
So first,
Wilma, I'm sorry, just real quick. This is Nick again. So over there in Idaho Falls, there's like a circle within a circle. Is that just because there are two different size hospitals in the same location?
yeah, here, there, you see what's happening there?
Okay.
Yeah. So there's
Okay.
3 of them that are different sizes, but yeah, they start overlapping when you're zooming out.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. You're thinking that's a bullseye, right?
I kind of was. I was wondering what was going on there.
That would actually be then an argument to make your symbol smaller, so that doesn't happen as much.
But I like that layering thing though, where it'll tell you, there's 5 within this circle or whatever. That was pretty handy.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. Okay. So here are the advanced options. So let's go into the base symbol first. So since we're talking about circles, there's not much I can do with the shape, but we can change the fill. And let me see here. We'll change the green symbols to an orange one. So I'll just pick a lighter orange. Um, I'll take the transparency. It's sitting at about 25%, which is what allows you to see those overlapping circles. And then for the outline, I'll just pick a slightly darker orange, or maybe even darker than that. There we go. So you can play around with that. Typically for the outline, I'd like to keep the transparency pretty low. And the next thing I would like to change are the breaks. So let's go there next. And so earlier I mentioned that in the legend, it looked like the numbers were sort of just, well, not random numbers, but not really nice round numbers. So I can go in here and actually change the 96 to 100, which I think looks a little bit better. Change the 213 to 200, and maybe the 374 to 400. Just to make the legend look nicer. And so basically, this is just the cutoff. The circles between 200 and 400 are the same size, but they're bigger than the circles that have between 100 and 200 bits. Okay, so with that, let me just close this out and let's take a look here. So if I were to look at the legend here, you can tell that looks a little bit nicer than I did before. Nice round numbers. Okay, so next, let's take a look at pop-ups. So I'm going to click on Lewiston here. So you can tell it basically includes everything, and I do have the option to zoom to it, and then a little bit later we'll use those 2 middle buttons, but let's go ahead and configure the pop-up. And again, not as many options here as you would have in ArcGIS Online. I mean, there's no arcade. There's really a lot less that you can do, but still you can make a reasonably nice pop-up. So for the header, I am just going to change that to the name of the hospital. And then I can turn off a whole bunch of fields. For example, I can turn the name off because that's already in the header. But let's say I just want to put in the address and the city. That's all the information I want in there. So when I click OK, you can tell that the pop-up immediately changed and just shows the settings that I just put in. Now there's an amazing amount of information that you can get just from the pop-up. So there's infographics that you can get. report. And I just want to show you that a little bit more when we get into looking at the COVID for the different states, because then we'll have data for the whole state rather than, you know, a point that represents Lewiston with a 20-mile radius. But just to show you that there's a lot of information that's not actually part of your spreadsheet that you can bring into your maps. And if you're looking at this and talking it over with other people, that you can bring in there and actually, you know, have that. Okay. So let's click on the top right corner to make it a little bit smaller. So this would make it really small to minimize it. The X will close it, but the one in the middle will just make your map a little bit smaller so we can put it side by side with your table. Okay. And I should make this just a little bit smaller again to make some space. Make my map a little bit smaller. There we go. So I can see them side by side. Perfect. Okay. And let's go back to Idaho. So let's click again on a pop-up, and I'll just pick Lewiston again. And then click on Select in Excel. So this button right here, and then on the left, you can see immediately that it picks that record in my Excel spreadsheet. So that's interactive. So let's go ahead and actually change the name here in the spreadsheet and then see what it does for the map. So let's say I'm just going to say the St. Joseph Regional Medical Center, and then I'll just put in Lewiston in the name here. And you can see in the map, it immediately just adds that to there. So this is very interactive. If I make changes, it shows up over here. Okay, so let's close the pop-up, and then we'll move this map just a little bit out of the way here. I don't want to close it up yet, but I'll just move it out of the way because I would like to add another map to this same Excel worksheet based on the same data. So I am now on slide 24 on page 12. So I'll add a map, my map 3. And just like before, I'll use the table 1. My location type, again, is address. If I want to verify that all my columns are properly lined up, I can click on matching them and then go through and double check that the settings are correct. In this case, instead of showing symbols that get larger or smaller based on the number of staffed beds, I just want to make them all the same size. So I'll go ahead and click none and then add the data. Okay, so in this case too, I will go ahead and change the name of this layer. I do this by going into the layer settings, clicking on the pencil, and I am going to name this Hospitals in Idaho. Okay. So one thing that we have not experimented with yet are the labels. So let me turn them on. And I can tell that they've already defaulted to the name. But if I wanted to change that, or I want to change the font, I can do that by clicking on configuring the labels. So let's do that. So here, if I wanted just to show the city, I can change that, but I think the name would be more helpful. I always like to make the label the same color as the symbols, because then people will automatically, you know, associate the label with the correct layer. So let's make that a dark green. Maybe make it bold and make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so that's a little bit easier to read. Now, if I look at all of Idaho, especially near Boise, this is getting a little bit busy over here. So if I zoom in a little bit, I'm like, okay, now maybe this is a good scale to start showing those labels. So I'll go ahead and change the visibility range. And of course, I can figure out if I want to put the labels underneath it to the left, smack in the center of them. Um, Typically, either bottom right or top right is a good place. Okay, so with that, let's close this up and let's zoom out. We can see them all. And of course, I'll zoom back into northern Idaho. And you can see that the hospitals have been labeled there. Okay.
Hey, Wilma, real quick, this is Nick again. Can you expand that map to full screen, please, so it's a little easier to see?
All right, there we go.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. So it is all there. So we did step 7. We closed the labeling dialog. Okay. So with that, let me make it smaller again. I'm going to go save my spreadsheet to preserve the work that I've done so far. And then since we have those 2 maps and we have a table, we want to make sure that we can see them all, and they have this really handy arrange maps. And so you can see when you click on it, it basically just, what is it? It anchors it. There's a word for it. It anchors to the corners of your screen. Okay. So the next thing that I want to do is maybe I want to be able to look at this map, and then at the same time I want to look at that map over there, and look at those 2 in relation to each other. So I can do that by linking the map views. So let's click there. And so this is asking me, which of the maps do you need to move to make the other one move? So which one is the leader and which map is the follower? So let's say that map number 2 is the leader. So I'll click OK on that. So what that means is as I move this map around, the other map moves with it. And I don't think it works it works the other way too. So that's nice. Okay.
Hey, Wilma, so if as I'm making changes onto that spreadsheet,
Mm-hmm.
it will automatically update those maps, right? So say, for the top Boise VA Medical Center, sales like, oh no, it's actually 1500 East 4th Street. If I update that, it'll automatically update the maps, correct? I don't need to do something different.
It will do that. So let's say that my office here turned into a hospital. I think this is our address. Chinden Avenue, Boise, Idaho. Okay. And let's see if that actually appeared on the map. Garden City. There we go. And of course, my dot's really small because we don't have many beds here, but let's say that we did. Okay. At least you can see it showed up right here. Doesn't look like the symbols updated, but you can tell that it did sort of interactively add this new point to the map.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So earlier we saw how to put an interactive map in PowerPoint. There's also different ways of getting those maps straight from Excel into PowerPoint, but then they wouldn't be interactive. Um, technically, does that mean that if you, let me just read that real fast. Does that mean that if you alter any part of the address, it will charge a new credit to geocode? If you insert a new line, does it geocode the whole list? I don't think it geocodes the whole list. I think it just geocodes that one. But if you're not sure about that, and you have like a rather long list, I would just ask your administrator to limit your credits. So if you're wrong, you don't spend too many credits, but I would imagine it would only charge you for the new ones or the changed ones. Okay, so later on, I will show you how you can actually share this map and put it in ArcGIS Online, and then it would be like any other map that you can bring into PowerPoint and show interactively. What I'm showing you now is two different ways to take a copy of this map and put it in PowerPoint. So the first one is by clicking on Create Slide. And it's going to be interesting now to see which presentation is getting the new slide. Well, not this one. And I should probably just close that one. Yeah, that's fine. Wonder. Oh, it put it in my presentation slides, so it just put it right in there. And another way of doing it is back to my Excel. Is by clicking on Copy Map, and then it puts it in your clipboard. In which case you can then paste it into PowerPoint. Oh, and it looks like I came right with it. So I think that is all I wanted to show on this particular data set. So next, let's do some geocoding using coordinates. So I'll go ahead and save my presentation. I'll minimize my maps. I'll make my Excel spreadsheet big again. And I will go to the Idaho temperatures worksheet. So we know that the first thing this add map is going to ask us is which table we would like to use. So before we start that up and then realize that we forgot to make a table, let's just make a table right off the bat. So what I'm going to do is select them all, and I think there's about 330 records. If I select the top row, and then I hold down Shift, Control, and the down key, it automatically goes down to my last record. And then I can click Insert Table. So if you missed that, you just highlight the first row, and then hold down Shift, Control, and then click the down button, the arrow that points down. It's a trick I only recently figured out, but it's super handy when you want to move around Excel spreadsheets. Okay, table as header, so this is looking good to me. So now that I have my table, I can go back to my ArcGIS maps and add a map. Okay, so here I should have the option to grab my new table. So table 1 was the one that we used earlier. So table 6 is this new one here. As the location, we have coordinates, latitudes and longitudes. So here we have to make sure that we match up the fields correctly. So the longitude can be found in the LON-DD for longitude in decimal degrees. The latitude is the lat-DD. And then it is important to pick the correct spatial reference. So when you click down there, this 4326 World Geodetic Survey 1984, it should be listed under popular. Okay. And I'll just say use as default, so next time it will automatically pick that one first. Okay, so this looks good to me. So let's click Add Data and Add Data again. And here are all our weather stations and the mean temperature in July. Okay, so I think this map needs a little bit of work. And I figured this was an excellent data set to show you hotspots in Idaho. So that is an analysis that kind of shows you when you compare the entire data set, which areas are relatively hotter or cooler compared to the rest. So first of all, let's go ahead and change the layer settings and change the name of this table. So we'll change this to mean July temperatures. There we go. So we've done that. And then let's do the same thing again, because now we have a layer for the mean July temperatures. But when we were looking at our spreadsheets, you can see that we have both the temperatures for January and July. So let's go ahead and also add in the January temperatures. So to do that, I go ahead and I click again on Add Data from Excel. I'll pick the same table, table 6. My location type is still coordinates, and instead of the mean July temperatures, I'd like to see the ones for January. I'll set my longitude, my latitude, and it remembered the default from the last time. Okay, and I'll add that in. All right, so here are my mean January temperatures. So I think I need to change the name of this layer so it's more comprehensive than table 6. Okay. All right. So let's do a hotspot analysis for January and see which parts of the state are relatively warmer than other parts. So I go to my layer settings, and under Analyze, I have my hotspot analysis. And so I can either choose to color areas that have more weather stations in Idaho, more red, more hot, or I can actually use an attribute value, which in this case, since we have actual temperatures, seems like the right thing to do. So we'll do one for the mean January temperature. I think that this is all looking good here. I like the default name, so I'll go ahead and I'll run my analysis. Okay. So you can see every bubble now has a dot on it. And to make this just a little bit easier to comprehend, I'd like to do 2 things. First of all, notice that we have this new layer called hotspots, and I'll turn the other 2 off. And also, I think this would be more comprehensible if we had a different background. So I'll go ahead and I'll change my base map again to this human geography dark. And now you can really kind of tell what's going on, right? So you can see that in January that the west side of the state is quite a bit warmer than the right-hand side of the state. And just to show you the legend that goes with it, so here are the cold spots. Those are in blue, and there's a confidence interval associated with that because you're comparing it to other data in the same data set. And then the other data, the red ones, the darker the color, the more confident they are, is that they are the higher temperatures in the state. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and save Excel. There's my save button right there. So as extra practice, let's create a hotspot analysis for the July temperatures and see if we see the same pattern where the west side of the state is hotter than the east side of the state. Okay, so with that, let's start with the July temperatures. Go and configure it, because this is the base layer that we're going to use to create a hotspot analysis. We'll use the attributes again. In this case, we would like to use the mean July temperatures. The result name looks good to me, so I'm going to run the analysis. Okay, and you can see a relatively similar pattern. Except, right along here in the summer, it is not as hot as it is right here in the valley. So we wanted to compare the two. So this is the winter, and here is the summer. So interesting. Okay. So next, let's add some existing data to this map. So far, we've only added data in straight from our Excel spreadsheet. But we can actually go ahead and bring in any ArcGIS data that we like. So click on ArcGIS data along the top. Let's go back to the Living Atlas. And just let's bring in some counties. So I'll just search for counties. And here I am going to pick the first one, the US counties generalized. So I'll just hit the checkbox and add it in there. Okay, so I can immediately see a problem with this layer because it totally covers up everything else. So what I'm going to do is go and back into configuration, into the layer settings, into my layer style. And if you remember, you need to go into the advanced to get more control over your polygon colors. So for the fill, I'll just set it to no color. That's a lot better. And for the outline, I'm actually okay with this orange. So let's use that. Okay. All right. So one thing I have noticed that I really miss here is that I would have loved it if one of the options here would be to filter the data so that I could filter this and only show the counties in Idaho. But unfortunately, I have not found that option yet. So we are stuck with counties all over the state. But next, we are on slide 33 on page 17. Let's go ahead and see if we can select all the hospitals, no, not all the hospitals, all the weather stations that are in one county, and then work with that. So let's go ahead, click on a county, and I'll just click on Idaho County because it's nice and big and it's right in the middle of the state. Then I'll use the Find Nearby button, and you can see it actually selected this entire county. For my distance and radius, I'll set this to 0.1 miles because I'm going to do a search, but I don't want to go too far outside of the county, but I need to put in something. So 0.1 mile is probably not going to pick up too many things that I don't want. So I'll click next on that. So then it's asking me what I would like to look for nearby, because I'm like, okay, find things near, in this case, Idaho County. And of course, I need to tell it what I want to find. So I would like to find anything that is in the layer for the mean July temperatures. Okay, and so even here, if I wanted to, I can save this as a layer and then later on actually load it up to ArcGIS Online if this is going to be something that I want to work with further. But let me click next here. It gives me a summary, and what it will do now is essentially select all the different weather stations in Idaho County. So let me make this a little bit smaller because there are different things that I can do with this. So here I can highlight the selected rows. So if I go through here, there should be a couple selected. You can tell, there they are, out of the 325. I can choose to show only the selected records. And so you can see that my list grew a lot shorter. If I want to see them all again, I can click on select all rows. I can even export the selected rows and put it in a new file or a new worksheet. So if I do that, you can see a new worksheet appears here on my Excel, in my Excel spreadsheet. and those are all the weather stations that are in Idaho County. So this is how you can basically do a select by location inside Maps for Office. Okay, so we have done that. So I think that's all I wanted to show you for the Idaho temperatures. So let's go to our last spreadsheet and work with that. I'll minimize step one again. I'll save my map. Maybe I'll make this just a little bit bigger so we can see all the different columns that are in there. Before we start, we need to go ahead and turn this into a table. So in my case, here I'll just select the top row. I hold down the Shift key, the Control key, and the down button. It just goes to the last record there. And then Insert Table. And I'll click OK on that. All right. So with that, I can go back to my ArcGIS maps and click on Add Map. Okay, so it already picked up my latest table. So this is the third one I made. So table 12 in my case. The location type, it actually recognized that I want to do that by state. And then I can color it, and in this case, coloring it by the number of positive cases works for me. So let me go ahead and add this data. Now, in this table, every single state only occurs once. But let's say that you have a longer table, and perhaps you have maybe 3 tables for Idaho with 3 different numbers. And so essentially, it is asking you if you got 3 of them, if you want to average those 3 numbers, or if you want to add them up, or what you would like to do with it. But in our case, since every state only appears once, in essence, just their COVID statistics on March the 7th, 2021, we don't have to worry about it. Like I said, you don't have to worry about it. Do not aggregate areas. Okay, and let's add in that data. All right. And so one of the things that Esri sort of will tell you when they do a presentation about this stuff is how they have this smart mapping. And I think this is an excellent example because just with just a couple of clicks, we basically just generated a pretty nice map with pretty good colors. Highlighting, the darker colors would be more cases. The lighter colors would be fewer cases. So they try to make it sort of almost do the work for you, and they just kind of try and guess how you would like to do that. So in this case, one of the problems is that different states have different populations. And so, yes, Idaho, for example, in this case has, I believe, like 173,000 people that have been tested positive for COVID. But when you look here in California, you can see that number is quite a bit higher, but there's also a lot more people that live in California than in Idaho. So maybe that's not really a fair comparison. So during the next couple of steps, I want to show you how you can actually calculate the fraction of the population that is testing positive for COVID or has tested positive for COVID anytime until March 7th, 2021. So we do that by clicking on, oh, wait, first I want you to, on slide 37, I want you to change the background. So for base map, I like the charted territory, the one with all the different colors. But up to you. It's one of the fun things you can play around with in a map here. Okay, so on slide 37, let's change the name because table 12 is not very descriptive. Let me go ahead and change that to COVID cases on March 7, 2021. Okay, that's better. And then I would like to go ahead and enrich this data. So then it is asking me, okay, so you want to get information about all those different states. What would you like? And so for any of you that have used enrichment in ArcGIS Online, this is in essence, you're tapping into the same well. So in our case, we would like to know the population. And I think that the 2021 population would be a good indicator that we can use to compare to the number of COVID cases. So with that variable selected, let me click on next. It doesn't make sense to use a radius. The only thing I would like to highlight here is that we can either overwrite a field or column that's already in our Excel spreadsheet, or we can create a new column. So let's do that, create a new column, and then click Add Data to Worksheet. Okay, so nothing changed in the map, but let's make the map a little bit smaller, and you can see it actually added in an extra column into the spreadsheet. So now that we have this, we have the positive cases, the total population. I mean, there's two ways we can go about mapping the fraction of the population that tested positive. I mean, one would be is we can add an extra field in here, put in a calculation, calculate it, and then map based on this new field, or we can do it directly in the map. So in this case, let me show you how to do that. All right. So I'd like to keep this layer as well, but I would like to make a copy of it. So then we can change the copy. Okay, so let's go to the layer settings again. And in here, we have this copy layer button. So let me click there. Okay, says the copy was successful. So when I close this, I should have two layers. The original, and then the copy that I just made. So let me go into the settings for this copy. So first of all, I can change the name. And I'll just call this fraction of the population infected. Okay, and then right now it is symbolized the same as the other layer, but I would like to change that. So I'll click on the layer style, and now I can use this divided by button. So I'll take the number of positive cases, and I am going to divide that by the total population. And so you can see that changed the map considerably, right? Like different counties are now highlighted. For example, Idaho used to be a lighter color and California was really, really dark, but now Idaho and California are the same color. Okay. All right, so let's clean this up a little bit more by clicking on advanced options. So this map, it's the same sort of color scheme as the last one, but let me pick a different color scheme. So I'll select a different color ramp. And when I look at this color ramp, it kind of shows that the states with the least amount have the darkest color. And typically people will intuitively associate darker colors with more. So by clicking on this invert button, I can actually make sure that the darker colors are the ones with the higher numbers. So for example, you can see the Dakotas are dark and some other states are quite a bit darker. The second thing I would like to fix up are the breaks. So just like before, numbers like this, not wrong, but they look a little bit sloppy and it's easier for people to read them when they're a little bit more round. So let me go ahead and change the first one in 0.05, which basically means 5% of the entire population. And I'll change this to 0.075. It's funny, the 7 on my number keyboard doesn't work. Okay, And then the 0.9, I'll just change it to 0.1, which is a full 10% of the population. And then this one I can set even a little bit higher and maybe make it 1.0125. Oh, sorry, no zero there. 0.125, so 12% of the entire population was infected with COVID. Okay, so with that, let me go ahead and close all this. And we have made a map that shows the percentage or the fraction of the population infected with COVID. And so you can see that some states are worse than others. Okay, this is also a good time to go a little bit deeper into the different infographics and reports that you can get out of it. So, for example, let's click on Idaho. And let's take a look at the infographics. So basically, there's a lot of information that you can just get straight out of this infographic right here. And this is all information hosted by Esri and maintained by Esri. I'm not sure what landscape facts are, but I regret clicking on it at this point. Okay, let me see if I can close this up and start this up again. Nope. Maybe a different state wants to still do it. If this figures out what it's doing, I also like to show you some reports. Oh, here we go, landscape facts. So a lot of information there, just outside your Excel spreadsheet. For the reports, and actually let me just click on Idaho again and create a report for Idaho. So you can create quite a few different PDF reports for any of the states here, or even if you did this by county, it will just create those reports by county. It just looks at the shape that you're clicking on. And in this case, let's just create an executive summary. And, you know, just showing Idaho works for me. So I'll just set this to 1 mile, so not to go too far out, and create a report. Okay. And we pull it over. And so this shows you a lot of information just about the polygon that you clicked on. All right. So I think we're getting close to the end here. Sharing your map. All right, so let's say that I wanted to load this up to ArcGIS Online and then share it either with everybody or everybody in my organization or with a specific group. I can just go ahead and click on Share Map. I give it a name. For example, COVID cases on March 7, 2021. Tags, I always like to put in the tag temp, so I know that this is just a class, or I can just delete it without worrying about it. This is about COVID. And then if you want it, you can add a little bit of a summary. You can go ahead and share it if you wanted to. You can share it with any of the groups that you have set up. And with that, I can go ahead and share it. And I'm just going to put my initials at the end here. Okay. So when I go into ArcGIS Online, I should be able to find that data layer that I just created. So I'll go to my content. And here it is. This is the map that I just created. All right. Now, this is not in the book, but if I wanted to put this on a PowerPoint slide, well, let's just go here and I'll put in a new slide. I'll remove what's already there. I can go in my ArcGIS maps. I can add a map. So this should have shown up now in my content. There it is, COVID cases on March 7th. There's my map. So I can click next. I'd like to add my legend in there. Let's just fill up the whole slide. Make sure that that is showing everywhere. And then I can insert my map. So now it is in my PowerPoint, which if I wanted to show that, I'll swap this over. I go to my next slide. Here is my map. I can unlock it and then interact with this during a presentation. So that is full circle. Okay, so with that, let me stop this presentation here. Let's move that over. And let's go to my last couple of slides here, because we've done that. Let's see. Slideshow from current slide. Okay, so as of now, I haven't planned any next classes. I am planning to offer them in person. And so I figured most efficient for people, and of course we start out by offering them in Boise because that's where I live and that's where we have a room here, to do two at the same time. So to make it worth your while, just come over for an afternoon and we can do two sessions at the same time. So ArcGIS Online 1 and 2. We can do the whole survey, part 1 and 2. Talk about Hub and Experience Builder during the same setting, and the same with dashboards and story maps. Meanwhile, everything is still being recorded and also can be found on our website. So if you go here, if you start out on our main website, if this is where you land, go to Services, and down here is all the training. And you can see all the recordings and workbooks that are there, so you can watch those. And that's about it. And I am going to delay this just a little bit. So hopefully, maybe in November, December, we'll do it. Or if I get requests from people for training, I'll just start putting them on. So with that, let me stop sharing here. Does anybody have any questions? If not, then I thank you all for attending, and I guess we'll see all of you later on. Bye.
Thank you, Wilma.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wilma.
Thank you.
Thank you.